Hello and welcome to another edition of EntheoRadio, where we talk about shamanism and very spooky things. Welcome to the Halloween special 2019. This is your captain of the undead pirate ship, Hugh T Alkemi here with Rayne Grant. Hi, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to come across your goodness. Yeah, you got some good stuff up there. I'm excited.
Oh, yes. And so you yourself, let's see, you are, you're an artist. You are creating various forms of art, and you're a writer, you're a poet, you're a painter, you're a photographer, a videographer, a musician, a cook, a mother, a witch, and a fungophile. What else can I say?
Indeed. Gosh, that's quite a mouthful when you say it like that.
I mean,
Yes. Yes. Lover of the planet, humanitarian, it all ties into humanitarianism for sure. Everything that I do.
some of your amazing stuff, you can find it on Rayne Grant. Spell your name for everyone.com.
Rayne. Rayne Grant. RayneGrant.com. And I've got a lot of stuff going on, like a lot of irons in the fire.
The way I found you is because you're doing something called a fungal documentary, Can Mushrooms Save the Planet? What's that about?
Indeed. Yes, can mushrooms save the planet? Let's see if you can even see this. This is this is one of my old magnets, but I found it on my, I've got a bunch of them on my refrigerator, and I was like, I gotta have something to show you. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook, my Can Mushrooms Save the Planet page. I've got nearly 11,000 likes, which is not a lot in comparison to some things out there, but it's all grassroots, and yeah, really good to see that people are interested in the topic of using fungi to help our planet.
Absolutely. I'm noticing you have a collection of interesting books in the background, and two of them that pop from the camera angle is by Rick Strassman, DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and I think that's the second book in his series, DMT, the molecule or something of untold religion? I forgot.
So entheogens are very interesting to me, but I have just started diving in because in my studies of fungi and all the multifaceted things about them, the most, like when I mention mushrooms and how they can help save the planet, whatever that means, most people think tripping. They're like, are you tripping? Like, what are you on? And I'm like, oh, I'm not really studying psychedelics. And so I have, it's taken a while before I dove into that topic. Although I've always been interested in such things, I have studied many other things previous to that. And so within the last year, I just started diving into fungi, and not that was the first experience, but I decided that I wasn't really, I was more interested in mycoremediation and mushrooms as a medicine, treatments for cancer and things like that. What people are doing with fungi to help remediate and clean up and things like that. But I have shown a lot of it. Like, I'm really interested in entheogens in general. I just started a chapter of the Psychedelic Club in the Durango, Colorado area. And my specialty is in the fungal department, but now I'm starting to just kind of dive into a lot of them because they're all tied in, and a lot of these books cover many topics within the entheogenic realms. But I would assume that you would know a lot more about entheogens than I. So I feel like I'm a baby at some of these things.
The book behind you, the blue title, DMT, is that the Soul of Prophecy? I forget. I'm trying to remember
the spirit molecule.
I see that it's Spirit Molecule. Go to your left in the other stack, top, towards the top.
Yeah, this is his other one. Look at that. So this is And the Soul of Prophecy. Yes.
Yes.
And so I have been collecting books. Sometimes people give me books. I acquire them in different ways, sometimes magically. But I have not. I have read bits and pieces of all of these books, but not all of them. But these are some of the books in my library that I decided to take and put here just so you can see. But yeah, they're just some of the books that I've been diving into, we'll just say.
So I'm feeling a little bit of a stir, perhaps some witch put a spell on me or something. And I kind of want to know when you got your black hat, how you got your black hat, how did you become such a nature girl and get involved with these spooky things?
Spooky things. You know, spooky's relative term, I suppose, right? We get spooked by things we don't know a lot about. People get spooked by taboo topics, and witchcraft and things like that may be one of those things, because people think about evil spells and things like that. When in actuality, just being connected to the divine and connected to our Mother Earth is really where the power is, if you want to say. Just tapping in and being in that divine flow is really where it's at. Now, if you want to get into spells and things like that, that's, you know, it's a little off topic, but I've definitely been very interested in plant medicine and things like that since I was about 6-7 years old. My mother had an herb garden, and she had a book called Back to Eden by Jethro Claus. And I remember being about 10 years old and just like really just reading the heck out of that book. Like, it was amazing to me. And I can't say that I agree with all of Jethro Claus's perspectives. You know, I can't imagine that I would agree with any person on every single thing, but definitely I've been very interested in using plants to heal people, even just from minor scrapes and bruises to illnesses and whatnot. And so since I have started diving into fungi specifically, I realized that they are incredibly powerful. And I'm just talking about like the enzymes that they produce, things like in shiitake or reishi or any number, when we get into the red-belted polypore, any of these understudied mushrooms too. But then we start diving into the psychedelics and how they interact with the brain. Not just psychedelics, but nootropics in general. And I am incredibly interested in brain health / nervous system health, because that's really what drives us all, and in our cognitive abilities and in our just being healthy. You know, having a healthy perspective is the first step in being healthy overall, you know. So yes, brain health is very important.
Absolutely. So I'm very excited about our private conversations about Amanita Muscaria. And I know you're just kind of peeking into the world of magical mushrooms. And it seems like you're also very connected with the entheogens. Mainly personal experimentation, or was marijuana your thing for a while? Because it's Colorado.
We're in Colorado here, so we've got a lot of legalization of things like marijuana. Is really beautiful herb. I have smoked that for a while. I don't smoke it every day. I like to be clear-minded. And it's not always that clear when I'm smoking. You know, I've got a lot of friends that smoke morning, noon, and night, and that's just, you know, that's not my personal thing. But that can be hazy in comparison to some of these other medicinal mushrooms, entheogenic and not, affecting the brain and causing major clarity and you know, heightened focus, you know, the ability to focus and things like that. And that is very interesting to me. I did start taking hallucinogenics when I was about 17. I know that 18 years old, and I dabbled in some of the chemicals like LSD, and I found that I could only reach a certain level. And that was not what I was looking for. I was looking for expansion. I was looking for some kind of spiritual connection, and the chemicals weren't really doing it for me. And so then I started taking the psilocybin, specifically psilocybin-based mushrooms, and that's where I came up with, I wanted to go by my middle name, Rayne, and I was like, yes. At 17, I was like, Rayne, and so I've been Rayne since I had that realization, but it still wasn't doing it for me. So I started practicing Tai Chi, like standing meditations and whatnot, and realizing that energy flow and balance within the body was almost just as clear. Like I was gaining some of the same insights, even more so just by being a clear person, not drinking the alcohol, not smoking all the time, but just being clear, and then hiking and getting up into the mountains and just being one with nature. And I went a number of years without doing any entheogens, like nothing at all, for over a decade. And so I was really starting to get that calling, especially when I started studying fungi again. I was like, gosh, I would like to have an experience. And I had never been in a ceremony type of situation. It was always like a party drug or something. You know, people would get together and take it, and everybody's just having a good time. And that is one place and one space to do it. It's good to commune with people, and it's a beautiful thing. I'm not saying, because some people say it's one way or the other. You know, I'm the type of person that thinks that there are many ways to the same destination. It's just a matter of what you choose. But when I moved back to Colorado, because I had moved down to Austin, Texas for a while to pursue sing my musical career, and was raising my family there. When I moved back to Colorado, I tried mushrooms again, and it was like, I don't know, I was just having major realizations. And it's amazing what these mushrooms, I didn't really fully understand. Now that I'm starting to study them, that now I kind of understand the chemical processes in the brain and whatnot and what's going on. But they really do open up a segue or a window to other dimensions, but just like greater understand. It just opens you up for greater understandings of things, greater connection, greater understandings. And keep me on track here. I'll ramble on.
In fact, let's dive deeper into that. Let's dive into Hericium, the lion's mane mushroom, and talk a little bit about why that's just brand new, kind of in the public's point of view, and why that is potentially great medicine. And I think it's a potential psychoactive in a certain quantity or with a certain biochemistry.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, it probably does open up, because it's opening up neural pathways. It's causing new connections, protecting your the mylar sheath, and opening up new pathways for those electrical currents in your brain. But that's where like Paul Stamets talks about stacking your mushrooms, which means taking multiple mushroom medicines at the same time. And so lion's mane is being studied in conjunction with psilocybin or psilocin, the psychedelic mushrooms, and then what Paul Stamets says is to add niacin to that in order to have that flush and bring the mushroom medicines to your nerve endings, which makes a lot of sense. So I'm very intuitive, as well as I look at the scientific data, but I'm also incredibly intuitive about things. Like I feel things out, and some things come to me in dreams and things like that. That's not so scientific. It's a little more spooky, you know.
Yeah, spooky, yes.
But the lion's mane is a really good one for neurogenesis, and that's not just within the brain. We're talking about the nervous system. Everything in your body is connected through the nervous system, and so it is my understanding that utilizing these various mushrooms in conjunction with the other medicines are going to be, it's going to vary from person to person, but my personal experience is that it's really helping. And I have some other mushrooms that I feel are very important in the whole cognitive arena, the whole nervous system. Because we're talking about eyesight and audibility and your ability to move and function, all of it's tied in together. And so if you have a healthy brain, you're going to most likely be healthy in the rest of the scenario. But lion's mane's getting a lot of press right now, okay? Because it is a legal mushroom. It's a food product. It's easy to grow yourself, and it grows all over the world, right? So I can understand why that's really, why people are focusing in on that one. And it's delicious. It is delicious.
Yes.
But there are other mushrooms that are amazing. Like there's some people that are talking down about chaga for some reason. And I understand where they're coming from. You know, it's not as available. It's hard. You know, cultivating it, you're not going to get the same results. So you have to go out and wild harvest it. But there's a lot of really interesting research about chaga, and I really feel strongly about mixing your chaga with some of these other psychedelic medicines. And chaga specifically is really good for the pineal gland, for the frontal lobe, but for the pineal gland and the release of these different chemicals that help balance our moods, our sleep patterns, and things like that. And it seems like all these medicinal mushrooms do that as well, but chaga is an interesting thing. It's really high in melanin. And so melanin is what protects our skin from the radiation of the sun. Melanin helps us to balance the melatonin and whatnot in our brain. And melanin is what makes our skin dark. It's interesting. But the chaga itself has the highest concentration in nature of melanin. And I find that to be highly, well, it's sacred, but I think it's important. I think it's important in the whole realm of things, including, yeah, and some these other mushrooms as well. But yeah, chaga, Psilocybin, Amanita Muscaria.
Well, I'm going to run out and go buy some chaga. Right?
Yes,
I haven't had chaga in a while, actually. It's been part of some mushroom blends, but you crave it. Wow. Because you're a white chick trying to be not so white chick.
Really?
Why do you crave it? Why do you crave it?
Well, I noticed that my body feels really good when I'm on it. Okay. Like if I take it daily, I feel heightened energy, heightened awareness. I first tried chaga when I was pregnant with my last baby. This was about 5+ years ago. A gentleman sent me a box full of his tinctures. Chaga Nation, I'll give him a shout out, Chaga Nation.
Nice.
And he does not sell to people unless he feels like the medicine is going to do them good. He will not sell to the general public. He's very elite in this. But I started taking it, and I, within the first week, noticed a difference, like a huge difference in my ability to focus and my clear-minded, like being more clear-minded about things. And so I was like, what is this stuff? I didn't even know what it really was. I was like, okay, chaga, it's weird. It looks really weird growing on the side of a tree. It looks like a cancer sore or something weird. So some of these mushrooms are odd, but that one's a really odd one. And we have something that grows like that here in Colorado. It looks very different. I mean, it looks very similar. It's on the aspen tree as opposed to the birch tree. And it grows pretty prolific here. And it's this burl on the side of these aspen trees. And I was gifted some of it, and I've tried the tea, and it makes a very dark tea, just like chaga. It's, the burl accumulates all the medicinal properties of the tree into that. Not that it's taking it all, but it's like it's like a super food, but it's accumulating it or hyper accumulating all the medicinal properties of the tree into that canker or burl. And I mean, the aspen burl has not been studied very much. And so there are a lot, we're still learning a lot about mushrooms and mycology and things like that. It's a very young science in the realm of our current understanding.
Absolutely. And maybe the mushroom medicine will make us remain young as we continue to study this science, so that we get enough information about it in one lifetime.
Right. Well, like the Amanita Muscaria is, see, some of these different mushrooms have nicknames, like reishi is the mushroom of immortality. But what I was looking at with the Amanita Muscaria is it has a couple of nicknames. It's called the herb of immortality, which is odd because it's not really an herb, right? I guess it's what is your understanding of what an herb is? But it's also called it's called the mushroom of immortality by certain people. And I wonder why they call it the immortality. There's no way we're going to live forever in these bodies.
So if you're a listener and you're hearing Rayne speak, Amanita Muscaria is the red and white Christmas time looking mushroom. We see it in fairy tales and Christmas cards, and it's those Christmassy red and white colors. That's what she's talking
Really beautiful, really beautiful mushroom. One of the prettiest ones that I've seen. And it gets a really bad rap. People are really afraid of, well, I mean, Amanita, the genus of Amanita has some deadly mushrooms within that, within that scheme of things. So it makes sense that people would be wary or careful, but it's to a point where people are like actually afraid of it. And even when you present new information, people still want to hang on to that. Ooh, you could die if you eat it, and it's just not true.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to find some fatality information. Like I looked for fatalities with the Amanita Muscaria. Please, if anyone has any information, contact me if you found any fatalities in conjunction with Amanita Muscaria, because I want to know. I found something, I think it was from the 1700s. I want to say it was the 1700s. This gentleman who was collecting mushrooms ate a bunch. Now, this is the thing, is it's in the record. They don't know if it was he that died or his wife that died. Okay, number one, that's kind of odd that they don't know which one it was. And number two, there's not any real evidence as to which mushroom they were actually consuming. So that was the closest thing to a fatality that I was able to dig up on the Amanita Muscaria killing someone. Now, it has hospitalized people because if you take a ton of this, I mean, there are constituents in it, and I wrote a bunch of this stuff down to make it a little more, I don't know, palatable, but in scientific terms, but yeah, there are constituents in the Amanita Muscaria that can be toxic, and if you were to OD on it, you might find yourself in the hospital. But I haven't seen any fatalities surrounding this yet.
Yeah, usually what isn't it, like violent sickness, throwing up, diarrhea, stuff like that?
Yeah, if you take too much of the okay, so yes, you get the sweats, you get nauseated, you might get the runs, but you're not going to die unless you get wet. I guess you could, well, speaking of, I'm going to drink some water. You could, if you get diarrhea, you better drink lots of water,
Yeah. Oh. So if you're watching and you see this video, you'll see my earrings. These are the Amanita Muscarias on my ear.
Yay. Are those real ones?
No, they're just artistic
they're cute.
rendition.
I have some real ones here I wanted to show you.
Oh, please.
Oh, and they smell so good. So these mushrooms,
like in the Bible?
they are like, they're my little fish.
Yeah.
This year was an amazing year for Amanita Muscaria as well as the king bolete in Colorado, our local porcini. But and so this is just a pretty little specimen. It's got the red with the white and the underbelly. It's got the veil still attached to it even. Oh my gosh, that's so pretty. I've got a big bag of them, and I've got small ones. I've got this is kind of a small one, but they're really pretty and they smell amazing. They make me salivate when I smell them. Okay, like my mouth is like, I want to just taste that.
Wow. Here she is. This is the wild woman of the forest.
I just ate it. Just
on
a little
the show,
bit.
ladies and gentlemen, she's eating a mushroom. People are like running and screaming in the streets about. It's not illegal. And the great thing about what you're talking about, this mushroom has never been considered an illegal substance, right?
Well, most places it is not legal. The only place that I can find that it is illegal is in the Netherlands. So if you reside in the Netherlands, it is illegal to own over 5 grams of it, okay? And 5 grams and under is a microdose. So if you have like a microdose worth, you're probably safe in the Netherlands. But just be careful.
The Netherlands.
In the Netherlands.
There's a place where a lot of weird stuff is banned. A lot of things that I consider legal highs are banned, and it's actually Louisiana. So I'd be curious to know if the state of Louisiana has banned Amanita muscaria mushrooms.
I didn't know that.
Let's give our listeners a few more names of this weird mushroom. This trippy, weird.
Well,
I'll give you the Japanese name.
Tell me what the Japanese name is. It's like the gem. No, that's the gem-studded Amanita. I think is the Amanita pantherina. which
Yes.
is very similar.
Yes. And I've found those in New Mexico, in the mountains, in Cuba, New Mexico, actually.
Oh.
And I found those whorls on the was it the aspen trees up in Arizona in the White Mountains on the Mogollon Ridge.
Oh, I didn't know they grew under aspen. They usually grow in conjunction with well, I've heard that they grow near birch in different areas, but here in Colorado, they grow around the spruce
No,
trees.
not amanitas. I'm talking about those whorl things, the
Oh,
chaga-like ones.
oh, yeah, the burl ones on the aspen. Yes, yes.
So I
And I
didn't
need
pick
to know
any of
their
those.
scientific
I'll
name.
have to pick some of those Arizona ones if I get up there.
Do because there was this one gentleman, his name is Manny, okay? I can't remember his last name, but he was one of the founders of the Telluride Mushroom Festival. And I found out that he was writing a book specifically about the aspen burl because he really felt strongly about it, but he passed away recently. And so I don't believe he actually finished that. And I am interested about his research. I know, I think his wife is still alive and I'm considering reaching out to her.
Yeah, you two ladies could finish it.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure, I love that idea, especially if we're all witches now.
Oh yes. Hey, so I gotta ask you about the Telluride mushroom thing, the festival there. But I'm gonna pause and put that on the table. I wanna talk about the tangutake. So we're still talking about these little Amanita muscaria mushrooms. They're also in Japan called the tangutake. And not, my Japanese is actually better than most Americans. I'm not fluent, but I did take several classes on it. And I do use it pretty weekly in Aikido classes. Tangutake, so we hear about shiitake and things like that. Take is the reference to the mushroom.
Okay.
In shiitake means like wood or oak, kind of like the mushroom that grows on wood. So there's the shiitake. So that's how they're labeling that. Tengu in Japanese actually refers to a demon.
A demon.
A wild forest dwelling leprechaun like creature with a big nose and a red face.
Huh. That's very similar to Santa Claus or something like that.
Right. A kind of wild, sort of anthropomorphized version of the Amanita muscaria.
Very interesting. I need to know more about this.
Yeah, so Tengu. Look up the Tengu. I
Tengu.
think also the other reference might be like a dragon, a red dragon of some kind.
Huh. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that.
Which, if you look at like Milton in medieval kind of dark age alchemy, you see that the red dragon reference is all over the place. And so it makes me really wonder how many people were experimenting with Amanita medicine and using the red dragon reference.
That's very interesting. And I don't see why that wouldn't necessarily be the case. I like that correlation. And it looks like, yeah, it sounds like more research needs to be done. What I'm finding is with some of, like specifically with the Amanita Muscaria, a lot of the old knowledge has disappeared, like it's gone. Right. So we don't have a lot of history to go by. And I think it's really important to look at some of these indigenous cultures and how they utilized the various mushrooms and plant medicines. And so when you have something as powerful or as iconic as the Amanita Muscaria, and then we'd have very little historical evidence or history on this thing, it's like, where is it at, or can we relearn it or unearth it in some way? But what I did find out about the like specifically the Siberians, and what during Stalin's era, when Stalin was doing his massive murders and things, so in Siberia, the shaman ate the mushroom in order to see visions and whatnot. That wasn't the only thing that they used it for, but the shamans ate it, heavy doses of it, and then they would see their visions and they would say that they could fly. And so I guess Stalin's men would take the shaman who were under the influence of Amanita Muscaria, and they were load them into the plane, take them up and open the hatch and say, "Oh, this makes you fly," and they would shove them out of the plane to their death. And so according to Lawrence Millman, Larry Millman, he's an ethnomycologist. Right. He was talking about how even when you talk to the locals there or mention it, even if they don't know a lot about that, they still like will like, you know, get wide-eyed, afraid looking. And he even says it might be a genetic memory at this point. People don't want to talk about it, and there's a lot of trauma surrounding this particular mushroom.
Kind of like witch burning, yeah. Shaman chucking, witch burning.
Yeah, something like that. So that's unfortunate that we've lost a lot of that information. But that doesn't mean that all is lost, you know.
So in that tradition, the Laplanders over there in Siberia, the name is Mukhamor mushroom.
Mukhamor.
Yeah, I'm not sure which. I think it's the Tungha. I think that's how they call it. I don't know the name of the language, but
yeah, I'd have to watch some more Larry Millman, you know. Look through some of my interviews I've videoed. I got a good interview with him, but yeah, the Chimchuk or I don't want to say their names wrong. There are a lot of tribes over there, but definitely it's still an important mushroom in their culture, and they typically will give it to the older people, like the old people, in order to help with pain, you know, aches and pains, and it helps to raise their it's interesting because when you drink this tea, it makes you really sleepy at first, but then if you've taken a heavy dose, you go to sleep, and then when you wake up, you're like, all right, I'm ready to go. And it gives you a lot of energy. So it's good for vitality. It's also good for sexual issues and whatnot. It's an aphrodisiac, but it's also kind of like cordyceps.
Oh.
It enhances sexual desire, is what people say, and I have I've seen that firsthand. Yeah.
All right, yay, hooray! Sounds exciting. That might even be a whole show unto itself. We're gonna table that. I heard a reference to the zombie mushroom.
Cordyceps.
Cordyceps. Let's table that for later.
Okay, let's do that, because it's a really interesting topic for sure.
So these fly agaric mushrooms are Amanita. That's another name. They call it the fly agaric, and maybe you got some names that are related to flies and killing flies or something like that, right?
Yes. You know, if you take this mushroom and you boil it in milk, in Russia, it's still traditional to this day to set out that milk with the Amanita Muscaria in it, and it attracts flies. They'll go into the liquid and drown. So, you know, I don't think that's one correlation with the fly agaric. The other correlation with fly agaric is that, you know, the shaman would say that it caused them to fly, but also the reindeer and other types of creatures will eat this out in nature. And there's a whole documentary about the flying reindeer. And I'm having a knock on my door. What's up? What's up?
Does he go over to Charlie's yard?
Yes, he can go to Charlie's yard and pick apples.
The joys of parenthood.
You can go over there if it's okay with the neighbors, okay? Okay.
Well, it's Halloween. They better. Are they getting dressed up?
They are. We're gonna go walk around Durango and, you know, do the trick-or-treating thing. Go see my mom.
Oh, very nice. Wow.
Kind of anti-candy, but you know.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully there's a deal that is made at the end of the night.
one that's in my favor, right? No.
Right. Yeah, right. Hey, I'll give you a free ride to the toy store and $10 to spend if you give me your bag of candy kind of deal.
Give me that bag of candy. Yeah. No. Oh my God.
I made that deal with my son when he was 7, and
how'd
somehow
that work for you?
Somehow he got both ends of that deal. Like, he got the reward, and then he somehow figured out where I hid the candy bag, and he got that too.
Smart boy.
Yeah.
Smart boy.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a fun handful.
That's the best kind. That's the best kind.
Yeah. I mean, look at his dad, right?
He's got a, you know, he's reflecting you, you know?
We're a little crazy. We were a little crazy in that household. No, we're just having fun.
Fun is a really important thing, enjoyment of life, and being in your gratitude, and one thing that I have noticed about some of these psychedelics, specifically the Amanita Muscaria, but also microdosing with the psilocybin, is that it causes these feelings of joy. Like you just feel so connected, and it just brings you to the present. And and sometimes we forget that, not that we should need a substance in order to feel these things, but it's definitely, it helps to align us. And it's almost like muscle memory or something like that in some of these cases, I do believe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Muscle memory. Even I would go so far as to call it genetic memory.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Some of the genetic
where were we?
memories.
We were talking about the flying mushrooms. Oh my God, reindeer, they seek out the mushroom. They not only seek out the mushroom, but I heard if someone pees, the pee smells like enough to where the reindeer will follow the urine smell.
Yeah, it's reindeer, like as in the deer, not reindeer, Sorry, bad joke. So
we'll do a Christmas special with reindeer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We'll just have a special every holiday. I like it.
Good. I'll dress like Skinny Santa. You can be reindeer.
Skinny Santa, poor Santa.
Oh.
He can't work year round. You gotta give him a break sometimes.
Yeah, he's on a fast this year.
And just Amanita Muscaria. No.
Yeah. Or the urine thereafter. So tell us about the urine thereafter.
So Amanita Muscaria has some different chemicals in it that are processed by the liver and the kidneys. And so we have what's called ibotenic acid, which converts into muscimol. So in this mushroom, we have ibotenic acid, muscimol, and muscarine, right? Muscarine. Body processes it, okay? So if you were to eat one of these raw mushrooms, you would have a lot of ibotenic acid, and that's what makes you feel sick, okay? Because the body can only handle so much. But what happens is when you take it into your body and you urinate, when you pee, your body processes these substances and converts the ibotenic acid into muscimol. Muscimol is what causes the relaxation and the hallucinogenic has the hallucinogenic properties in it. But the shaman, they would eat it, and other people, their followers, would drink the urine of the shaman. Also, the shaman would go out and collect the urine of the deer that would consume this mushroom, because it would have less of the ibotenic acid. It would have more of the muscimol. And to each their own, different traditions. All right, do it. But it's interesting. It's also looked kind of down upon in our culture because it's weird. It's a little weird.
What, the urine drinking or what?
Drinking the deer urine. And what I was just reading about is how at one point, many of the hunters would have a little container on their belt at all times in order to collect the urine, just in case they came across them. Because if they came across a deer peeing or a reindeer peeing, they would collect the urine right there on the spot. And I don't really understand how they did it, or, it can only go so far in my mind. I'm like, interesting.
I mean, you're a videographer. Let's go do it. Let's do this. Let's go over to
Let's do this.
Reindeer urine. Go to Siberia.
I think someone already did. I watched that documentary, or part of it, because there's only parts of it available online. But a better version could be done, maybe.
You can be behind. I'll do it. I'll collect the deer urine.
You'll do the urine.
It'll be better to drink it warm, anyways.
Right. Well, I don't know. Maybe chilled is good. I don't know. Over some ice. I don't know. I'm not a pee drinker, but there are other ways to decarboxylate this stuff that doesn't require you chasing down.
Let's talk about that. Let's decarb without peeing.
And I will say, I had a really interesting experience this past summer up in the mountains while I was collecting. I was looking for any edibles, but what kept being shown to me in profusion were the Amanita Muscaria. And everywhere I was walking, and I did catch a bunch of video of this too. And I took my kids with me, and we were like collecting, and beautiful Amanita Muscaria, but it would have like a big bite taken out of it. And I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. Like the deer in our area eat it, but some of these bites were pretty big. And I was like, I wonder if the elk are also consuming this mushroom. And as we were collecting, all of a sudden, one of my sons, my 12-year-old's like, Mom, moose. And I'm like, and there were these 2 male moose in this area where a lot of the Amanita, we were like working our way up there in the meadows. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to get this shot. And this moose looks back at me, and they were obviously not afraid, but I didn't feel fear. Like I didn't feel like I was threatening them, and I didn't feel threatened by them. But then I realized it was the moose that were eating the Amanita Muscaria up there. And I'm like, I don't know. I was blown away. I found it to be incredible, like just powerful, just their being in their presence, but knowing that they were the ones eating these Amanita Muscaria, and they're huge. These animals are huge. They're huge.
Yeah. They're like,
so it was really powerful. And I was like,
or something.
Yeah. So I found that to be really, I don't know. Like, I mean, I hear about, in Siberia, the reindeer eating these mushrooms, and I just found it to be just spectacular. Finding the moose out there, and they were the ones, they were taking
relatively cheap to go find a moose and collect urine.
I'm not going to collect any moose urine. Those guys, I heard my son told me, he's like, they're more aggressive than sharks. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll leave them alone. They can have, they can eat as much of the Amanita Muscaria as they would like.
Actually, I will nix my idea for winter vacation to visit moose.
That's summertime.
Oh, moose are active in the summertime? I thought Amanita only goes off starting after late summer in the fall and then into winter.
Well, in Colorado, we have a pretty small window of when things grow. And we're looking at summer, fall. Winter, it's covered in snow. So summertime.
You don't think they pop up through the snow? There's some stories about how in the dead of winter in Siberia, which is more northern than where you're at, they would go up the chimney of their little, the natives would go up the chimney of their little yurts, and then they would be snowed in, and they'd go collect these Amanita Muscaria mushrooms out in the snowy weather, and then they'd drop back down the chimney with their big red.
So the information I could find on that was that the shaman that had the Amanita Muscaria, it was collected in the summer and fall months, and then they would dry it, and then they would bring it. But yeah, the mushrooms aren't going to grow in the snow. I did try to find information on that because, mushrooms, they need certain temperatures and things like that. And, I have found mushrooms in the snow, but it was only because it had just recently snowed on them. So,
it's more anecdotal, that story, than
yeah. I mean, they did bring, from the sources that I was finding, they did bring the dried mushrooms to the people, and they make teas out of them and whatnot, but you have to dry them in order to decarboxylate them, and I can get more into the details of all that whenever the time is right.
Yeah, do it now. Get us on a topic other than
mushrooms and pee. Yes. I know, it's such a weird story, and the whole thing with Santa Claus and whatnot. I tried to find as much information as I could about that, because there are people who are super naysaying, and I just like to look at all the data. So yeah, Santa Claus.
Well, before we leave the arena of urination, let's talk about how many times the urine can be reuptaked, because I heard it was 7 times.
It might be 7 times. I know it's several times, and I haven't tested it. So
yeah, and that might have been something that was stated in a book I read by Clark Heinrich called Mushrooms in Alchemy and Religion.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
And so they're using that holy number of 7 to sort of associate with the Christian traditions.
Sure, that makes sense. And a lot of these, yeah, when you're dealing with alchemy and energetic things, not just like the scientific stuff, numbers do play a part of all of that, and vibration and whatnot. So, yeah, I have to wonder about that. I haven't seen any scientific data on that.
Avast ye listeners, we're setting sail from the land of urination to decarboxylate the next subject.
Going from urination to decarboxylation.
Yes.
You know, decarboxylation is known really well amongst people who deal in the realms of marijuana. You know, you decarboxylate your marijuana in order to create more THC and CBD. So basically decarboxylation is just a form of heating a substance, and then it changes the chemical structure into something else, right? It causes certain parts of the molecule to burn off, and it changes it into something that's more accessible by the body.
Okay.
Okay, so when we're talking about Amanita muscaria is highly revered in many different cultures, but also some of the more recent religious groups, like the what were they called? The Ambrosia Society. Have you heard of them?
I'd like to.
Yeah, so they're I don't want to call it leader, but they're kind of a little bit cultish. You know, I met Donald Teeter, the guy who wrote a book. What was the name of that book here? He gave me a copy of it too. It's a very small book, but you can find it online in a PDF format.
All good leaders have books.
Yeah, Soma is yeah. What is it called? What does he call it? Anyway, I'll get back to that because it'll come to me when it's supposed to. Sometimes my brain works in certain linear ways. So anyway, we're gonna keep going with it. But anyway, they used the Amanita muscaria, and they believed that the Amanita muscaria is Jesus, and what in biblical terms. They believe that it rises from the dead after 3 days and all this stuff. And I went and visited them. They're located right outside of Austin, Texas. I took a trip down there, went and visited those cats, and it was right after Donald had died. Rest in peace, Donald Teeter. But they have a lot of really good information to share with me, and they're very much into, like, that's part of their religious practice, is taking this mushroom. And so, yeah, the Ambrosia Society, if you do a search for them, they have a website, and then they have a link to their PDF if you want to learn more about some of their traditions and turning the water into wine and whatnot, so to speak.
Nice. And then Jesus walks upon the water because the mushroom floats, right?
It does float, yes, unless you boil it. And when I boiled it and took a bath with it, they were definitely not floating. Yeah, they were.
You boiled it and took a bath with it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and that's an interesting.
You want to share?
Yes, you know, I was researching how it was really good for your skin and the absorption of it in the skin, and I guess in different parts of the world. I think in Turkey, I want to say it's in Turkey, they create like a salve out of it and actually will put it on the genitalia, and because it's supposed to absorb a lot more through the sensitive areas of your body. Now, I have not tried that yet, and it's going to be one of my next things, is to create a salve or some kind of lotion out of the Amanita muscaria, and just for topical use. You can use it wherever you decide, you know, but really good for arthritis, things like that. But yeah, I went ahead and I took 16 grams of dried material, which is way more than a heavy dose, right? And I boiled it. I boiled it for 45 minutes. Now, everybody that talks about the Amanita muscaria, they say boil it for 30 minutes. But all the information I've read about just mushrooms in general, you want to boil it for at least an hour. Depending on the mushrooms, it can be up to like 3 hours, you know, like if you're dealing with something like chaga. So getting a full extraction, right? And so then I poured it into my bath and I soaked in it for a good hour and a half. And I could definitely tell, but I've also ingested Amanita muscaria, and so I kind of know what to look for. And when you're taking it in small amounts, it's barely recognizable. It's just an enhancement. Everything feels enhanced. Everything feels lighter, more joyful. Just, yeah, everything has a little bit of a sparkle to it. And that's how I was feeling afterwards for several hours. Just felt really light. but my skin was so soft. I was like, okay, it is good for the skin. It's been used for eczema and things like that. But yeah, I took a bath in it because just because I can, and I did
It's a very
for scientific,
yeah,
I'm doing a scientific experiment here.
it's
Something.
still very witchy to do that. Witchy science.
Witchy science. The science of witchery. All right. And Amanita Muscaria. So Amanita Muscaria is very taboo. If I put a picture up online of just finding it in the wild, I will get comments from people saying, be careful, you could die. Oh my gosh, don't touch it. And things like that. Okay. People are very afraid of this mushroom.
I'm kind of feeling like I should share a story, and it's about my ex, who was a producer on this show. And
Okay.
so I got some Amanita muscaria mushrooms in the mail out here in California, and I was preparing them by decarbing them. I believe I soaked them, and then I put them in the oven and baked them.
So you soak them first.
I soaked them first, and then I baked them.
What'd you soak them in?
Water, maybe water and alcohol mixture, and then of course the alcohol burned off. So I think it was a combo. It was definitely not just water, now that I think about it. And then so I got this sort of red water that cooked off. I cooked it to the point where it was gummy. I removed the mushroom material, and then I kind of like pressed everything into a glob, like a little resinous ball that was left on the baking pan. And I put that in a little container, and I'm like, let's go to a Burning Man event, and we have this wonderful medicine and stuff like that. And somehow her and I were busy or focused on something else. And she had this lovely little dachshund that knew exactly what we were up to all the time. And it had made a habit out of stealing and eating any psychoactive substance, and just about every psychoactive substance that I had ever processed in the house or in the kitchen or in the backyard. And we came back to a missing amount of this Amanita resin and a really barfy dog. The dog took more than was recommended for like what you're talking about. Like, it took a huge human dose, and it's like a less than 20-pound dog, maybe a 15, 12-pound dog.
Oh my goodness.
And yacked a lot, and was kind of woozy, and slept and dreamed a lot, and was fine in a day or two.
Poor little thing.
Yeah.
Vivid dreams. I bet it did.
The dog used to have vivid dreams all the time, and I think the dog somehow knew instinctively what we were up to, because I have, maybe in another episode I may have described this, but I have processed mescaline, and I've taken that from San Pedro cactus, and I took all that remnants that I wasn't using and tossed it and buried it in like a composted way in the backyard. The dog went and dug that up and ate it.
Oh my God. Wow.
And then we had mushroom chocolates in my ex's purse once upon a time. The like psilocybin chocolates. Yeah. The dog tore open the bag and the purse and ate the chocolates. Dogs aren't supposed to have chocolate, and somehow didn't die from that, and was really, really high on psilocybin. So the dog's been on muscimol, psilocybin, and mescaline now. And the third kick was I got a space cake, one of these edibles with THC in it that was way strong, way too strong for me. And I was like gone for a couple days, just high. And there was like a second one, and I left it in a place that was jumpable, like a dog could jump up and get it, and it ate that too. And got really high on weed. Just like, and so like the dog really, I think, really knew what it was doing, because there's other things that it could go after. And even with the chocolate, it kind of knows that there's a problem with chocolate causing barfing and maybe even dog sickness and stuff. But it sort of sought out this altered state repeatedly in my presence and in her presence. Whenever we were up to something, the dog's like, hey, I know what you're up to. I'm gonna get it when you're not.
He wanted to be involved, and he wanted to evolve.
Right. Yeah.
Aww.
It was an interesting experience. And so that kind of speaks to the non-lethality of Amanita muscaria on small weighted animals.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's not going to kill a dog, it's probably, I mean, like a dog is much smaller than us, so.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. It's not lethal. It's not lethal. It's hard on the liver, but it can be processed, you know. The body processes it. You'd have to eat like 10 caps or something. You'd have to eat a really large amount for it to be fatal.
Right.
And I don't know who would do that. It'd have to be very naive to do that. You're like me.
Okay.
Well, you're still alive. This is good.
Still alive. No, I haven't eaten that many, but I would do that. And okay, so we've talked outside of this show, and I want you now to talk about your eating of Amanita experience.
Oh yes. Yeah, it wasn't this past summer, it was the summer before. And I've been doing a lot of research on Amanita muscaria, and it took me a number of years before I even felt safe smoking it, because that's a form of intaking it, is smoking it as well. We can get into that, but that's a different story. But I had read about it. David Aurora talks about how the edibility of the Amanita muscaria being a choice edible if prepared properly. And you have to parboil it. Everyone says, you know, I mean, there are certain people who are like, oh, you just need to parboil it once. Parboiling it is when you take the mushroom, you put it in a large amount of water, boil it for like 15 to 30 minutes. You pour off the water, and then what you have left is the Amanita muscaria that is supposed to be edible. So David Aurora says to parboil it twice. So I was very excited about this big load, this huge load. I think it was like 40 pounds. Me and my daughter had brought out of the woods here in Colorado, and they were just so beautiful. And I was going to dry them and prepare them, but I was like, you know what? And I had just recently been to a talk by Langdon Cook. If you're familiar with Langdon Cook, he's an author out of Oregon, forager, and he talks about the edibility of Amanita muscaria as well. Okay. So I thought, okay, Larry Evans told me parboil it once. David Aurora said parboil it twice. I'm going to parboil it thrice, you know, and I did it with a little bit of vinegar in it. Supposedly the vinegar helps to remove the constituents that are sickening or hallucinogenic. So right. I did that. I parboiled it 3 times. Then you take that mushroom matter and you slice it up and you saute it in butter and garlic, little salt, just like you would any delicious mushroom. Now, I will tell you, this mushroom is delicious. It's very sweet. And then with that salt and butter and the garlic, it's savory. It's delicious. If you like mushrooms, it's a delicious edible. But I was hungry for this mushroom. And
you ate You ate one during this interview already.
Well, it was just a nibble. That's not going to do anything. I'm not going to feel anything from that. But there was at least 5 caps that I had sliced up and prepared, and I put it on a plate, and I videoed the whole thing. I was very excited about it. I was like, oh, I'll share, with people how the beautiful aspects of how you can change this from a psychedelic or toxic mushroom into something that is a choice edible, as spoken about by many, by several of our experts out there. So I sit down and I eat it and I talk about it because I'm videoing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Delicious. And I ate it all up. I think I was really hungry for that mushroom, and it was delicious. Well, give it about 30 minutes or so. I started not feeling so good. started feeling nauseated. My mouth started salivating a lot, started sweating. And I was like, oh, oh no. And it was starting to come on real heavy. And I was like, dang, like I did everything that they said to do. I did it 3 times, you know, but I started feeling really like it was coming on heavy. And so I just, I made the decision to go ahead and make myself purge. I went to the bathroom and I made myself vomit. I induced vomiting to just get it out of my gut. Cause I was like, I could tell, like I had eaten a lot.
Whoa.
And I was like, God, what is it? You know, I know that in our Rocky Mountains, all of the mycorrhizal mushrooms that we're dealing with are special, we'll say. Like our chanterelles, we have a special type of chanterelle here, you know, Cantharellus roseocanis, and our porcini is specific to our Rocky Mountains. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's probably the case with our Amanita Muscaria as well. And I did not know that. I just guessed that afterwards, but yeah, and I went through the night. I didn't get sick after that. I was glad that I had chosen to purge because I wasn't really looking to have that experience, but I was in a safe environment and I just stay hydrated, and, you know, I slept really well that night and had vivid dreams and stuff. But, yeah, so you have to be kind of careful about this. I did find out the following year at the Telluride Mushroom Festival, after speaking with some other mycologists, that our species here in the Rocky Mountains is a little stronger, maybe closer to the Amanita pantherina. You know, the Amanita pantherina is known for being really high in the muscimol and ibotenic acid, and so apparently our Rocky Mountain variety is very strong. So just a warning. It's not really food grade, and I can only imagine if I had eaten it in its full strength, what I would have experienced. But anyway, that's that's my story. Yeah, so yeah, be careful. Know your mushrooms. But even being careful, even taking the precautions and following the protocol, I was still I was tripping.
I feel like there's a couple of easy life insurance policies that could be sold just listening to this episode.
Yeah, mushroom hunters life insurance.
Don't tell them, you know, that's what you're insuring for. So I do this too. Sometimes I'll eat a really considered toxic mushroom, and one of my teachers said it was okay to parboil the elfin saddles, you know, the black elfin saddles that are false morels. And I've done that a few times, and no
was it
problem. Good? Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, just no problem. But they kind of have something that is akin to a jet fuel like substance, and so you have to open boil with water, and it cooks off whatever's in that black elfin saddle.
Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't.
You know, I have to wonder about these mushrooms that you have to process really heavily in order to make them edible. You know, like, have you heard about our Agaricus biforus? I'm sure that you have. With Paul Stamets had like was on Joe Rogan's show, and they started talking about our Agaricus biforus, which is like the mushroom you find in the grocery stores all over the.
Yeah, tell me about that. That's a little mysterious.
It is mysterious, and I had a lot of people asking me about it, and I didn't know the answer because Paul Stamets said that his life was being threatened. When he couldn't talk about it. His life had been threatened, and apparently there's another mycologist who has said a similar thing. Peter McCoy was talking about it. So I still talk about it. I have not been threatened as of yet, and so when I teach classes, I always mention this because I think it's very strange.
Peter McCoy.
Peter McCoy, yeah, rad mycology. We love him.
He's been on this show once.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's fabulous. I got a really great interview from him at the Mushroom Festival.
So tell me, what are you saying? I'm not understanding.
So that is a mushroom that causes tumors. It's mutagenic to our cells. And so I find it very weird that that's the mushroom that is the most common one that people eat the portobello, the cremini, and the white button mushrooms are all, they have constituents within them that are mutagenic to our cells. And the information that I was able to dig up and find is that you can destroy these mutagenic properties by heating it up, by boiling it. And so they said, so the information I found was like, if you saute it for like 5 minutes, it kills about 10% of these mutagenic properties. But if you boil it for like 2 hours, it can remove 90% of it. And I'm like, who wants to boil a mushroom for 2 hours to remove, you know, then what kind of, I mean, I don't know, like it makes me very, very much question why that is the most common mushroom being eaten.
Wow.
By the public.
And a lot of times people eat that raw in salads.
And that's even worse when it's even stronger, the mutagenic properties. And I can't remember what it's called. It's called like Agaric something or other. I have to look it up, but yeah, it's mutagenic. And I'm like, there's so many amazing mushrooms that are like anti-mutagenic, like that protect our cells and combat cancer in various ways. Like, why would the mushroom that's the most, you know, known about and eaten, and you find it in every supermarket, why is that the one we eat, the one that is mutagenic? And I don't know, there are people out there that make fun of that, you know, whole thing. I get it. There's memes out there about it. But I choose not. I mean, I've still eaten it here and there, but I choose not to consume it on a regular basis.
I had a microdosing meetup group where I was talking about Paul Stamets' stack in San Diego here last couple months ago, maybe last month, I forgot. A couple months ago. And someone brought this to my attention where he won't talk about that in that interview. And I was like, whoa, what's that about? And you know, the stack and the speech he made about microdosing versus the Joe Rogan interview, totally different things. But someone brings that up, and I never really could put an answer on that until you just kind of did that reveal. My theory was that the people that produce big amounts of mushrooms, probably like Del Monte or something like that, you know, those big food industry people that are somehow connected with Monsanto, those people probably were the ones that threatened Paul or any mushroom expert that wants to come out with this information about how this mushroom is not super healthy for general consumption. Also, I wanted to throw in there that it's probably the most genetically modified mushroom, and maybe the only genetically modified mushroom that's available to the public.
Well, that's interesting. And the whole genetic modification thing is interesting because people work with mushrooms and train mushrooms in the laboratory. And I don't know what the genetic alteration is when we're talking about using mushrooms for any number of things, remediation projects and stuff. But that may, I know people play with the genetics in the lab quite a bit. But yeah, I don't know about that mushroom and genetic modification of it.
Sure, I put forth that maybe as an explanation for the reasons why Paul couldn't talk about it, that that could be a patent on that particular set of genetics.
Perhaps so. Perhaps it is a patent or something. Yeah. And you know, I'd rather think that it's something like that rather than some conspiracy. You know, I'm not anti-conspiracy theories or whatever, but definitely good to keep them in consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why or whatever, but I just, you know, I decided to do a little research and just see what I could dig up on that topic. And it opens up a whole can of worms for me and my questions, you know, and not knowing the answer to that, we can only speculate, you know.
So Rayne, it sounds like the mushrooms that don't get you high get you really low, and the mushrooms that do get you high are actually really good for you.
Well, that's a good way to look at it.
Tell us more about getting high on maybe smoking Amanita or, yeah.
Yeah, so that brings me back to the Amanita Muscaria, and I kind of just put together just a little bit of information to try to keep myself on track, you know, as far as the explanation of Amanita Muscaria. So I have talked to people about this numerous times, and I am always faced with adversity, unless, well, no, I wouldn't say always, and I don't like that word anyway, but for the most part, people are very adverse to this mushroom. So what Amanita Muscaria has within it, I mean, it's got a lot of chemicals, but the main constituents are ibotenic acid, muscimol, and muscarine, okay? And I'll get into each of those a little bit. I mean, like very, very briefly, because science is only so palatable to certain audiences.
Sure, yeah.
But ibotenic acid itself is a neurotoxin, okay? And so just like any glutamate, like monosodium glutamate, it's kind of in the realm of those. And there are people who are very adamantly against MsG, monosodium glutamate, because it is an excitotoxin. It's a neurotoxin, okay? So why would we want to put this in our bodies, right? And so I did a bunch of research on it because I'm like, okay, that's a good point, you know, what's going on with this mushroom, what's going on with these chemicals that causes it to be different than MsG, right? So my understanding is ibotenic acid in itself has some properties within it that's good, even though we're trying to, by heating this mushroom up, what we're working at doing is converting the ibotenic acid into more muscimol, because muscimol is what we're really looking for when intaking this mushroom. But there's a lot of information out there, but ibotenic acid does have its medicinal properties, okay? So I want to, but what it does is it binds to what's called the NMDA in the brain. It attaches to the GABA receptors in our brain and allows, like, say this is a receptor and this is a receptor, and there's like an electric pulse that goes between them, okay? And as things degenerate, we have less of those connections. And so when you take GABA, for instance, which is plant derived, it does the same thing as ibotenic acid and muscimol. It attaches to those receptors and allows for the pulses to go in between them, much more regulated, okay? And it regulates it in a way that calms the system down. That's why it's being used in conjunction to, like, to help suppress seizures and things like that, okay? So I drew up this little thing. I don't know if you can even see it, but this is what ibotenic acid is, okay? We've got hydrogen and oxygen. We've got nitrogen here, and we've got nitrogen and hydrogen. It's basically hydrogen and oxygen. But what happens is when we heat it up, because these are double bonds, this right here is a very, very strong structure, okay? But what happens is when we heat, this is ibotenic acid. When we heat it up, what happens is right here, this bond breaks. And then what we have left is muscimol, okay? And this is what muscimol looks like. So it's basically, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple what it is. Okay. But the ibotenic acid is what makes our stomach upset and is really hard for our livers to process. So when you have if you were to eat a fresh specimen of this, it would be very high in ibotenic acid. And you don't want to do that. You want to dry it first. So just drying it alone is going to decarboxylate a certain percentage of it. If you were to put it in a dehydrator or put it in your oven at a very low temperature, you're going to only convert about 30% of the ibotenic acid into muscimol, okay? So you're still, you know, like I nibbled a little bit of that mushroom, and I did it kind of as a joke, but if I were to eat a bunch of it, I would get nauseated. I would get very sick. And, but the muscimol itself is what we're really going for here. So you want to boil it. And that boiling process of at least a half hour, I say to an hour, that's when the muscimol, you're going to have the highest percentage of muscimol, okay? So the muscimol is what's being studied. Like over in Australia, there's and I should have written it down, the name of the university, but they're studying muscimol in conjunction with MS and epilepsy and different brain and nervous system issues. Because what it does is it allows, you know, allows these transferences of energy in the brain, but it's like kind of training the brain to act in these ways, but it relaxes you. It interacts with your brain in a similar way that alcohol does on a low, but alcohol is not good for your brain, but it relaxes you, right? It lowers the inhibitions, it relaxes you. So on a small scale, that's what the muscimol is going to do to your body, is just cause this calming effect. It lowers anxiety and panic and things like that. So if you were taking it, like microdosing it,
Wow.
You would start to see a lessening of these, like if you have anxiety disorders and things like that, it's being used for that.
This sounds like a really great time to mention your social media on Facebook, because I think the link to that study is on your Facebook.
I have a lot of links to a lot of these studies, okay, and I'm adding more all the time. But yeah, can mushrooms save the planet? If you type that into any search engine, it's going to take you to my website as well as my Facebook page. And I am accumulating a lot of the science papers and whatnot, because I think the history and the shamanic usages of this mushroom, as well as anything really across the board, I think it's really relative. But when we look at the scientific data and research on that, it basically confirms what has already been known through the ages, But some people really need that scientific research in order to believe it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's all relative. But then we have what people are really afraid of is the muscarine, okay? Because muscarine in high dosages could actually kill you. It can be fatal, okay? And so muscarine is found in this mushroom, but at very, very low amounts. So you can eat an entire mushroom and not be negatively affected by the muscarine. But from what I understand is that muscarine in itself has certain properties within it that's good for us as well. So this mushroom, even though it's got like toxins, it's all, I feel like nature has a way of balancing things. And then through our witchiness and processing things, we can draw out of it more or less of these things, like if you want to poison someone. I'm just kidding.
Oh boy.
I'm just kidding. I won't go there.
Right there.
But we're not poisoning anyone here. We're trying to heal. But there's this one lady on YouTube.
We're witch doctoring.
Yeah, witch doctor. But yeah, the muscarine is what causes your pupils to dilate. Okay, so muscarine, it hasn't been used in treatment, in certain treatments, but it has been studied because there are certain scientists that are like, oh, maybe we can use this when doing eye exams or something to open up the pupil. What is it called? Meiosis or something like that? I think it is. But yeah. So it causes your pupils to dilate. But it's found in a lot of different mushrooms. Like the muscarine is found in our king boletes, the porcinis that everybody eats. It's in boletes and hygroscipes and lactarius and our different russulas. So this is like a common chemical, but there are certain mushrooms that you want to be really wary of, like that are in the Amanita family or genus. You don't want to eat, like our death cap or the destroying angel, for instance. Those have been known to be fatal. But yes, there is muscarine in the Amanita Muscaria, but it's in incredibly low amounts. And so it's I know that's been one of the main concerns when I'm talking to people. They're like, what about the muscarine? And I'm like, well, and so I looked it up, but this is an interesting thing about muscarine. It's really good for toning our smooth muscles in our body. So it has like things that are good about it. So our smooth muscles. So that's going to be like our gastrointestinal, it's going to cause our gastrointestinal system to run more smoothly. Mm-hmm. It helps us with our bladder, helping it, it helps tone these muscles. And so I'm like, wow, really? So this toxic, so it's interesting, and I don't pretend to know it all, but it is definitely interesting and is noteworthy. But especially when people are afraid to take these mushrooms. So the thing is like it helps. Oh, and the smooth muscle is also in our bronchial system and our breathing, and it helps to slow down our heart, lowers the blood pressure. But if you were to take like a large amount of muscarine, it's going to cause you to have breathing issues and things like that. And so, yes, you want to definitely know your mushrooms that you are intaking.
Right. So it was that was ibotenic acid, muscimol, and muscarine.
Yes. And so when you're heating this mushroom up, you are converting, you're decarboxylating the ibotenic acid into more muscimol, because the muscimol is really what you want to go for when talking about using it as a brain tonic, using it in either microdosing or in full-on, full-blown dosages. And people have asked me many times, how do I prepare this? How do I take this into my body? And there are numerous ways. I mean, this has been used for thousands of years. This mushroom has been revered, feared, and forgotten about in a lot of ways, but yet it's our iconic mushroom, right? It's seen in a lot of our fairy tales and things. So it's like, if it's so scary, why is it in children's stories? I mean, I don't know. I find it to be very interesting. And I smoke it. I have found resource. So I smoke it, I crumble it up, I dry it, I crumble it up, and I put it in my pipe or my hookah, and I smoke it. And my body tells me when to stop. And when you and the burning itself is going to decarboxylate quite a bit. That's my understanding. And so when you smoke it, it is a very, very mild hallucinogenic. I don't even know if you'd really consider it a hallucinogenic, because it really doesn't act the same. Like when I think of a hallucinogenic, I think of like psilocybin or psilocin or any number, like LSD and things like that, where you start to trip out, like you're hallucinating. But when you smoke it, it is it's referred to as the businessman's hallucinogenic, because you can smoke it and feel very clear, feel very grounded, very clear, very focused. It's completely different, and just everything is just enhanced. But it's not like I'm seeing things. It's not like there's not the same thing as like DMT or anything like that. I just feel very on top of it, and I can go through my day feeling very clear and aware. And it heightens my awareness of my surroundings. And there are a lot of references to this. I'm not totally, it took me a while before I even got the nerve to smoke it, about 4 years ago. And I did that. When I smoked it, I was like, wow. And so I create my own smoke blends. I'll crumble it up, powder it. I'll mix it in with mullein, a little sage, a little cannabis, and I'll bless it. I like to do it under the full moon or the new moon, get my witchy out,
Yeah.
But I did not know that was a common, like that is actually a traditional way, a method of intaking it, is to mix it with these other herbs. And I found a reference to it within, I'll give Robert Rogers a shout out, Fungal Pharmacy, his book. He has a whole section on Amanita Muscaria, really worth the read. Lots of detailed ways to prepare and history involved in this mushroom. Also, David Aurora mentions it, smoking it. But also, if you are interested in aphrodisiacs, there's the Encyclopedia of Aphrodisiacs, and they have a smoke blend recipe in there. Very similar to what I was already doing, just kind of intuitively with the mullein and things like that. But it's really nice. It's very mellow. Usually when I do a talk or whatnot, I don't really talk about, I haven't really done a talk on Amanita Muscaria. This is my first one. But afterwards, I like to smoke people out and talk about the Amanita Muscaria and just kind of educate people on it, because I think it's a really powerful, beautiful mushroom, and it's not really to be feared. Definitely be careful when gathering it and know what you're gathering, but it's not, if it's the Amanita Muscaria, it's not as scary as people want to make it out to be. But that being said, I have read about, I have to do a ton of research before I choose to take action on putting something into my body. I'm very sensitive to chemicals in general.
Yes.
I'm a super sensitive person, super sensitive to energy, super sensitive to chemicals in my body. And so when I talk about these things and when I do them, it's with great awareness and feeling the energy of what I'm working with. And so I it took me a while before I was brave enough to actually drink some of this, okay? Because I already tried the eating thing, right? And I was like, whoa, okay, I thought that I was gonna have a nice meal and not have a hallucinogenic experience. But this last week, and after talking to you, I felt really brave. And actually, there were a couple of nights so I was like, I really think I'm ready to make a tea out of this. And so night before last, I weighed up 3 grams. And I'll go ahead and tell you what these, let's see. So there is a website that I suggest anyone who is interested in anything having to do with entheogens, go to the Arrowwood Center. They have a website. They have a ton of information on anything you want to look up. But they are saying that a strong dose is 10 to 30 grams, okay? And that a medium dose is about 5 to 10 grams. So that means that a microdose is 4 grams or under. I decided to go with 3 grams just before I even read that. I was like, you know, I felt it out energetically. I weighed up 3 grams. I boiled those mushrooms for about a half hour. And I actually added a little passion flower to it just because I wanted it to have like some flavor or whatever.
Nice.
Had my honey. And I drank it. And I felt a little bit of it, but it wasn't strong. I felt relaxed. Okay. And I did it right before bedtime too. So I was like, also when I go to bed, it's my favorite place to read and research and things like that. So I was just researching and doing things like that. And then I'm like, I just felt really sleepy and I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I felt really revived. I felt really good. Okay. And I was like, but I didn't really feel the effects of the mushroom itself. So last night, I decided to go with a 4 gram dose because I just want to. So I did it, right? So I did the 4 grams. I boiled it, just like I said. And I also ate a little bit of, I do these mushroom extracts and honey. And so I have some lion's mane that I was like eating honey mushrooms, you know.
Okay.
I want my brain to be on it for for today. You know, I was like, I'm going to up my dosage of lion's mane, you know, why not? So I ate my lion's mane, Colorado Mushroom Company, you know, that's my mushroom company. And then I did the 4 grams and just drank it in a tea. You know, you don't eat the mushroom matter. Okay. Always strain that off. So I boiled it, strained it off, drank my mix. And within about a half hour, because I have a very sensitive system, I started feeling kind of almost drunk. Okay. And that's what the Siberians talk about, feeling drunk. But I felt very just kind of just relaxed and just kind of silly and giddy. But I wasn't hallucinating. I didn't see any visuals or anything, but I just felt really like, and then as it came on, really strong wave of it, I was just like, could barely keep my eyes open. I was just so drowsy. I couldn't control it. And I was like, all right, it's bedtime. So I went to sleep and I woke up about 6 a.m. just feeling so alert and so revived. And I felt like I couldn't remember my dreams, but I could tell that I had some very intense dreams. And Amanita Muscaria is known for inducing dream state and helping you to work through issues during the sleep process. And I'm like, I'm ready to do a full-on dose, but not quite yet because I want to space these things out, allow my body to kind of integrate and stuff. But I will say that even at the 4 grams, and I'm about 125 pounds, but so you know, I'm kind of light, but and I'm a lightweight. But I mean, it just made me want to sleep. And so I know that it's good for people who have insomnia and things like that. So this mushroom is not as scary as people want to think that it is.
There's a brand that sold mushrooms in Arizona, in Tempe, Arizona, at Happy High Herbs or Rainbow Bliss Botanicals. It's called the Dream Pillow brand. And I don't know if they're still in business, but yeah, they sold it as dreaming incense.
Oh, yeah. When you burn the Amanita Muscaria, it smells really good. Like it smells like an incense. It has a similarity in its smell and flavor. Like when I'm smoking it, It's not exactly like opium, but there's something about it that reminds me of the opium. Now I'm getting a thing saying that my internet connection is unstable, so I don't know what that.
It's showing that your video feed is actually very skippy and skippy.
Skippy's not good.
Glitchy. Skippy's not good unless it's peanut butter.
Or if you're just skipping, you know, out there skipping in the world.
Right. So,
but yeah.
I'm still
But
here.
all of this information that I'm talking about, all of this information, if you want references or anything like that, a good place to go is my Facebook page. I like to reference the science papers, the historical references and all of that. Or you can always get a hold of me personally and I can send you a list of books and whatnot that I'm getting this information from.
Very nice. I really want to get into some of the stuff we tabled, but I'm not sure it's going to be the right time because we've had a really long conversation already. So maybe we'll save that for the overtime or the extras or the fireside chats, as I call them, EntheoRadio extras off the record. But I wanted to ask if you're ever going to be revealing the video you took of you bathing with Amanita Muscaria.
I probably should. I mean, it doesn't show any nudity, you know. I mean, I was nude during the bathing process, but I tried to keep video, you know, shoulders up.
Right. You're supposed to they're supposed to get people to tune in, so you weren't supposed to tell anyone there's no nudity.
I know. I mean, there was almost a glimpse of a nipple, but it was just so close, you know.
Yeah, it was just a mushroom floating in the water.
It was. I was actually bathing with these mushrooms. Like after the extraction, I pour the mushrooms into the water and they're all floating. And I'm like, I'm going to swim with the mushrooms. But these mushrooms are so beautiful. In the video, I do show the gills, and opening the gills looks very, very feminine. It looks very feminine. And it was very exciting. I found it very exciting.
Yes. Happy Halloween, boys and girls. So will we be doing tricks or treats? Rayne, are we doing tricks or treats?
Both. No, I'm just kidding. But when I do believe if you take these mushrooms, even if you're just smoking them, which is going to be the mildest form of intaking them, that in itself is an aphrodisiac. You know, I can just tell, but I take a lot of cordyceps mushrooms, and cordyceps are really amazing for your brain and your nervous system as well. But the cordyceps, the Amanita Muscaria, the psilocybin, which we didn't really go into, everybody else talks about the psilocybin, so I'll let you, go to these other psilocybin experts. And in conjunction with like reishi and lion's mane, chaga, a lot of these beautiful mushrooms, really good for our brain, really good for our entire nervous system. It's going to add longevity. Sexual energy is tied in with longevity in certain practices like tantra. And I think that the mushroom medicines have been in our cultures through time immemorial. We don't even know how far back our relationship with some of these mushrooms are. We're just rediscovering some of these things, and we're always finding new things out. And mycology, the world of mycology in general, has lots of room for expansion and growth because it is such a new science. And I encourage anyone out there interested in these topics to dive in. Because there's lots to dive into. This is only one of the topics that I am interested in. I am very, very interested in soil health and reversing desertification, using our lovely microbes, fungus being the supporter of life on this planet as far as I can tell, And so that has been my area of research most strongly, but I definitely believe that when we are thinking when we're thinking clearly and we're able to interact with the world in a healthy way, and that starts with how we look at things, how we are interacting and reacting with our world and our environment. But if we can think clearly and make better decisions and feel our connection to it all, I think that's a huge start. You know, ego is a tool, but these mushrooms, they seem to really enlighten us in a lot of ways, and or they help us to get back to our roots.
Oh yes, and they form symbiotic relationship with our roots. It's
absolutely.
So there's this, we did table it. I'm going to untable it. Let's untable it. You mentioned cordyceps. And so I called it earlier the zombie fungus. Ooh, like, tell us why it's called the zombie fungus. Do you know that story?
So cordyceps is a very intriguing fungi. Okay, it is weird because it lives on and takes over the bodies of insects and other, not just insects, arachnids as well. But just like yeasts, if you get like a yeast infection, if you're heavily, if you have a lot of yeast in your body will be like, oh, I need sugar. Okay, so that's a similar thing, but not exactly. So for instance, there are hundreds of species of cordyceps, and each one is specific to a different type of bug, if you will. But what it'll do is it will infect its host. And let's just say it's for example, an ant. And it wants to spread its spores, so it tells that ant, I want to go up to the highest leaf on the tree so that it can spread its spores. And so that ant's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And it just goes as high as it can. And then when it reaches its spot, it connects to the tree or the leaf or whatever. And then the mushroom, the cordyceps, will continue to eat the fungi, the ant, and then pop a mushroom out of its head. It completely digests the insect or the arachnid, and then spreads its spores. And then Paul Stamets has a patent out having to do with using cordyceps as a natural form of pest control. It's not harmful to humans. In fact, it interacts with us in a completely different way. It's really good for us. And it's in its wild state. If you go to like Tibet, the locals will wild harvest it. It's like above 14,000 feet. If you're interested in learning more, what's his name? Daniel Winkler is a guy he does the mushrooming tours over there in Tibet. Yeah. And I want to go with him and go see these things. But the locals will harvest it, and it attaches to a type of larva. It's a type of butterfly. I think it's called the ghost. The ghost. I can't remember. Anyway, it's the larva of this particular type of moth that is in the ground when it's in its larval state, and that's when the cordyceps attacks it when it's just a baby, and then the mushroom pops out of its head, but it pops up out of the ground, so you only see like a little finger, above the ground, and so they have to get down low and find these, but they sell them. I think the price is more expensive than gold. Yeah. Which is like, whoa. But there are ways of cultivating these mushrooms in a vegan sense. Like you can grow them on specific types of mediums. I've talked to several of the top growers, like that's Cordyceps sinensis, and no one can get it to fruit in a laboratory setting. No one can emulate what's going on in nature, but people have been able to fruit different varieties of cordyceps, like Cordyceps militaris has been able to be fruited on grains in a lab, and so it's interesting.
Very nice. So the zombie fungus. Oh, we have visitors.
I have my daughter here. My little daughter's here. We are going to go trick-or-treating. What I'm going to ask you to do is to make sure you have all your stuff ready, your socks. It's going to get cold tonight, and we're going to go see Grandma. Grandma says she has some surprises. You're ready already? Do we want to paint your face too? Yeah, I like to paint faces.
I gotta paint my face tonight too. This is gonna be fun. Oh, and there's a cat. Oh my god!
Got my little witch cat.
Got a witch cat and a trick or treater and a witchy witch.
And I'll be eating some cordyceps. I make some amazing cordyceps products. Well, other products too, but I like to extract in honey, which everybody does the alcohol extraction or the water extraction or the fermentation. but I use honey to extract, and it takes a couple weeks, and it's good stuff. I sell it here locally, and people, yeah, some people are addicted to it. So.
Nice. It sounds like a pretty healthful addiction. So here's where I'm at. The trick-or-treaters here.
I don't want to leave.
Hi, we'll let your mom go in just a second. We're gonna sign out because this pirate ship is about to set sail. I think we're gonna seek out the good tidings of a zombie fungus professional. Maybe we'll get Daniel Winkler on the show soon because he would love to talk about some zombie fungus, I'm sure.
Yeah, Daniel Winkler is a good one to talk about it with, and then John Holiday.
Oh.
He was the largest, I think he had the largest organic grow op, and he did sinensis specifically. He just never could get it to fruit. He sent me all of his papers, and I got to read through it, exactly what they did and the time frame, and it's all very interesting. He's also the guy that did the study on the women's. I'm not going to talk about it.
Oh, no.
I'll have to send you an article I wrote about that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're gonna have like a very witchy Christmas where we talk about some more amanitas and aphrodisiac mushrooms. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And by that time, I'm sure I will have learned even more.
That is too wild. Okay, so yeah. We're not even gonna no reveals as to what we will be doing next with Rayne Grant, RayneGrant.com, and you can find her. She's a videographer, and her biggest, most exciting project as of late is Can Mushrooms Save the Planet? Type that into a search engine, go on Facebook. Find me on Facebook. You'll find that I'm a big fan, and I often share reposting a lot of Rayne stuff. And you can find EntheoRadio, this episode, on podcast media across the nation, across the globe, internationally, and into space. We are on Spotify. We are on Castbox FM, EntheoRadio.com, and you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Rayne?
And if you are interested in learning more about entheogens in general, I did start the Facebook group called the Psychedelic Club of Durango, where I am specifically just posting things about, well, I do the mushrooms, but other people are more interested in other things. But yeah, and so even though that's in Durango, Colorado, there's still a lot of good information on that. on that website. So yes,
absolutely. So join us on social media, and you can find me under Hugh T Alkemi, Travar Hughes, and you can also find EntheoRadio across all of the search engines, EntheoRadio. And yeah, let's join the Psychedelic Club of Durango, and so we just type that into Facebook and we find that.
Yes. There are two pages. One's like a club, but that one's just for like board members. But there's one where you can like the page and then get updates. I try to post relevant information that allows people to dive in further.
So when will it suit the witch to release her film?
So I have been working on this documentary since 2012. And the year I started working on it, people were already like, when are you going to release it? When are you going to release it? And I found out that Louis Schwartzberg, who just released The Fantastic Fungi with Paul Stamets, he started working on that the same year I started working on mine. So I don't feel so bad that I have yet to get it out, seeing that I am an independent producer, all self-funded so far. I'm looking at getting some grants so that allow me the time to sit down and edit together. I have so much footage, it's ridiculous. And I have to say stop at some point. So yeah, I would like to aim for within this next year to have something out there so that I can move on to my next projects, which are also video related, media related.
We need to take you. You need to take you and the family on tour and bring you out to California where you can do some talks.
I love that, and I think I'm going to be speaking at the Soma Mushroom Camp thing. You know, I put in an application and they have yet to get back to me, but somebody just made it very clear to me. They're like, look, you're on the schedule. I was like, oh, awesome. So I'm going to be doing a couple talks there, it looks like, this coming January.
Yeah. That's up in Petaluma, or is that in Sonoma?
It's in, I think it's in Sonoma County, and I haven't hammered out all the details of how I'm getting there yet or anything, but I'm going to be doing a talk on entheogens, mushroom entheogens, and then another talk on using fungi to help save the planet.
Dude, I will be there with Amanitas on.
Yay! All right. Well, that sounds very exciting to me.
And come out here and help us with the movement, because you know so much about how mushrooms can save the planet and how they can help our brains. Help us with the movement with decriminalizing. In one of my last episodes, we talked about decriminalizing psilocybin. Decriminalize psilocybin in California. It's going to be the next big thing. You kind of sort of already have that in Denver, right?
Yes, they had a decriminalized psilocybin movement in Denver. It passed, you know, so that is decriminalized within the county only.
But not in all of the state.
And so I have been waiting for the proper moment to kind of spearhead this, because I'm kind of like spearheading a lot of things, like the Four Corners Mycological Society. I got that going. You know, anything mycologically based I'm doing, but I'm very interested in what they did like in Oakland and whatnot, where it's like decriminalizing nature, just across the board, because psilocybin is very important, but I believe that all nature is a beautiful thing and should be decriminalized. So I'm looking at what they've been, like New Mexico, which is not very far from where I'm at, because we're in the Four Corners area. It's already it's not illegal to grow psilocybin mushrooms. It's illegal to possess it, sell it. It's illegal to intake it, but it is not illegal to grow it. So it's a super weird thing.
So if I have it in me and they can prove it's in me, I'm doing an illegal thing?
You know, it's a really weird gray area, and all of these things are very gray, especially when we're talking about decriminalization of something.
So if I
there are a lot of gray areas.
If I throw up a magic mushroom and they test my throw up, then I'm a criminal?
So that's where it's really weird. And why would they push it, you know? But there, you know, there are corrupt people all over the planet that have like incentives, but really I think I would like to see the entire state of Colorado decriminalized, but I'd like to see our entire nation, I'd like to see our entire planet get to that point. But it's just one step at a time. We're all doing our part. And but yeah, I'm looking at perhaps with some of these meetings with the psychedelic club, that I might feel out who is actually interested in hopping on board with that, because really we can't do these things alone. And right now I'm spearheading a lot of things, and I'm looking for people who want to kind of jump on that train with me, because I'm just not going to take it on by myself. I'm just like, I know that there's people out there that want to jump on the train with me. It's just a matter of connecting with them. So that's what I'm seeking to do. So, reach out to me if you want any information, or if you want to be involved in any way. I can usually point people in the right direction, regardless if I have the information or not. I can dig up. I have enough contacts and connections. So
cool. That's our dear friend Rayne, Rayne Grant, like the thing that she's looking to receive, everyone.
Yes.
A grant.
Yes.
And we wish her a very happy trick-or-treat session, and that lovely lady in the background there that is ready to go to Grandma's house.
She's ready. Aww. Well, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, putting all your energy into all the various things that you're doing. I'm just going to say I'm really proud of you, and I support you, and I'm super thrilled and humbled to be featured on your lovely podcast. So thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, and a happy Halloween. This is Captain Hugh T Alkemi signing out.
Lovely.